Hello.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going okay.
Long time no see.
Yeah, took a break for a couple weeks. And then last week was like, I simply have no capacity to host, even if there's agenda. So here
Out of
we
brain
are.
space. Yeah, I get you.
Out of brain space, out of time. All right, we'll give it a few minutes. I'll just, let's see. Just let everybody know I've got to time box this one to 30 minutes. Unfortunately, Jeremy's unable to join, so we'll just have to time box the meeting to 30 minutes today. I think that should be doable given what's on the agenda, if I'm not mistaken.
Then I will ask now for you to give me screen sharing permission.
Yeah,
while we're waiting.
Let's definitely do that. All right, you are permissioned for screen sharing.
Excellent. I will just prepare for whenever we're ready.
Sure. Give it maybe one more minute.
Roger that.
All right, Laura, I think you can go ahead and get started now. I'll just, I'll do my little intro. Welcome everybody to the Tuesday, April 27th, 2021 meeting of SIG Multicluster. And Laura has both of the agenda items today. Laura, take it away.
Thank you. Okay, so there's kind of 2 points I wanted to talk about today, but really the first one is the major one, about an update for just the general alpha to beta graduation plan. And Jeremy, I like liaise with Jeremy about this because he can't be here today. So if there's more conversation about this later, especially if Jeremy wants to put in any 2 cents for anything that's discussed, then we can, do this more than just today. But I wanted to give kind of a little update. So I'm going to present these slides like this, and just kind of go through a little bit. So I put a bunch of background here, especially for people who maybe are new. But kind of the important thing I want to say is that I think we've made a lot of updates between for these points for alpha to beta graduation. So I want to update everybody, kind of give you my 2 cents of where I think everything stands, determine any next steps for any open items. And then in particular, one of the things we could discuss now, or at least open the floor for, is anything else we may or may not want to put in this beta to GA graduation spot, because that defining that is one of the criteria for beta graduation as well. So here is the overview. I have some broken down slides going forward, very emoji based today, but these are all of the alpha to beta graduation criteria from the KEP. So I think that 4 of them are basically done. 2 of them can kind of be worked on. 2 of them I have some sort of questions for, so I'm going to have that slide shortly so we can discuss. And then these 2 I kind of saved for the end, but maybe we want to discuss these as well. So I'm going to go through them by category here. First, the ones that I think are done, or like complete or on track. So one item is a detailed DNS spec for multi-cluster services. So I think this is soon to be done, on track. There's a PR, it's I can link it again, but it's also in prior agenda notes. That's currently in the status of getting reviewer approval. We've been talking about it a bit here. We went and talked to SIG Network too. So I think that's very close. So I think that one's on track. For network policy, either resolved or explicitly ruled out. This one is explicitly in the non-goals section, so this one's finished. A formal plan for a standard cluster ID. The KEP for cluster property was the plan, is the plan. So I consider this formal plan part done here. And then finalize the name for the supercluster concept. This also has been done previously. It's now cluster set, and I just did a quick triple check, and supercluster is not mentioned anywhere right now. So before I go to the next one, is there any secret beef with any of my perspective here of thinking these are basically complete or on track in the way that I've said?
Remind me, when for cluster property, we agreed it would be a CRD, right?
Yes, we did.
And that's going to be an alpha CRD or we're GA CRD?
I think it will be alpha, but I think we think there's not a big jump between alpha and GA, if that's what you're referring to for that CRD itself and for the KEP itself.
Yeah, I guess I'm trying to figure out, like, does the cluster property CRD exist? Like, do we have any feedback on it yet from anybody else?
Yeah, we made a SIGs repo, and then I'm gonna throw in sort of like an alpha version of it once we formally move this KEP to implementable. There's one more sort of cleanup of the cluster claim words to cluster property to do there. And then the other thing that had kind of slowed that from to implementable was that finishing up the API group, at least the selection from the community perspective, though it is pending API review since it's a kates.io locale. So yeah, did that answer the questions? Those are a couple various tidbits.
Yeah, actually, who's doing the API review? Was that me? Did I get assigned that and just miss it?
You haven't been assigned it. I haven't formally put it through. I think I have to open an issue to get an assigner.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there was, if I recall, there was a discussion about who loads the CRD, and Nikita, if I remember, was working on something.
Yes, we connected over DMs, but there hasn't been any super material progress, but I can double check on that. That being said, we didn't perceive that as blocking our side of implementing the CRD.
And
I would say,
sorry,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, just to surface a little bit more of the context there, like, part of the discussion that we had in SIG Arch was around if we choose to have a CRD, like, how will it be loaded? Since this particular one is a kates.io subdomain, right? And your connection with Nikita was over. She had some like API machinery ideas type of things in process for how that could be done with CRDs, right?
Yes. So the question I guess I'm dancing around or trying to get to is, are we convinced that that problem is sufficiently solved that we can rely on a CRD for something like this? Or are we going to realize that, gosh, this really should have been a built-in API because the CRD loading issue just isn't solved yet?
I see. I think maybe there's two ways we can think about that, because I think that we can kind of put it in the bucket of, if you are MCS API compliant, you need to have loaded the CRD because it's a dependency of being MCS API compliant, and that kind of puts it on implementers of any MCS controller. And then I think there was our separate interest in having this generally available, which from the SIG Arch discussion was highly dependent on this work that is about bootstrapping CRDs, which is still TBD and not something we are directly working on right now as a SIG too, from a control perspective, I guess.
Right. So my fear is, if we say this is a cool API and everybody should use cluster property, and then they do, then other systems, let's assume cluster lifecycle or something wants to build on top of it, they're going to also take the requirement of, well, if you're using cluster lifecycle, you have to install this CRD, and we will eventually hit a conflict where they need version X and we need version Y, and the user is the one who gets screwed. And that's what I want to avoid. So I would say, for this is all about alpha beta, right?
Yeah, this is about alpha beta, and to also make the point of that there is a separate beta to GA section of cluster ID defined, blah, 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 which the word defined versus formal plan is kind of a nuance maybe I'm not 100% getting, but that's also possibly relevant to
Sure.
when this
Okay.
should be finalized.
I can live with that. I think my main point is we want to check in and have a decision. Either we understand how cluster property is managed and gets loaded and is versioned, or we revisit the question of whether it should be a built-in. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think that's fair, and I also think it might be educational to like have it initially start in alpha as a CRD. It might give us good data for like what kind of problems shake out around bootstrapping CRDs that maybe like we aren't aware of yet. But I would definitely say that like as a beta criterion, we have to feel like we know the implementation shape at the level of built-in versus CRD.
And we're okay to beta MCS while cluster property is still alpha, yes? Or are we conjoining those betas?
That seems like it, yeah, it doesn't seem like we should beta MCS while it has a dependency on a thing that's alpha.
Is it a real dependency, or is cluster property like an additive optional thing? I forget exactly what we're using it for. I mean, we're publishing some information through it, but it's not a critical part of running an MCS implementation, is it?
It's not, because people are doing it today and they don't have it.
Right.
You kind of need it to do DNS, which is
there you go.
like technically optional, but not really, I guess.
Yeah, same as
in
Kubernetes.
That way, yeah, same as Kubernetes. So I think that's the big one.
And I'm anxious about calling cluster property beta without having some answers. Maybe we can we, I know Nikita's going through some crap right now. Maybe we can ping Nikita and see if she has any updates or something that we can read before we
Sure.
make a call on this.
I would say like even if there's a fully formed implemented idea for bootstrapping CRDs, like I would still like some burn-in time for us to like see how that works in practice during an alpha. It seems like the kind of thing that there could just be so many like things that come out of the woodwork when you shine the light on it. So that's sort of where my head is at.
Yeah, and ultimately, if we decide we need to move it to a built-in, then we need to rethink API groups, because there won't be a clean transition path. You can't have the same API group on both a CRD and a built-in, right?
Right.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is to plan to have an alpha period for cluster property where it is a CRD, which was the advice that we got from SIG architecture when last we went. In that process, determine if there's anything about bootstrapping the CRD that's problematic if we leave it on the MCS side. And also simultaneously, I'll talk to Nikita and keep that line of communication open. And then we probably will discuss again, both from the MCI going from beta to GA and also about cluster property going from alpha to beta. I think is the summary here, if I got it all.
Yeah, I sort of wonder if we need to choose like a temporary name for the first version of the CRD that like we know isn't the name that we would ideally choose to accommodate for if we do turn it into a built-in, we can do that while it's in alpha and take advantage of that backward incompatible change doability while it's in alpha. I don't know, Tim, what do you think? Do you see what I'm getting at?
I do. It's sort of hacky, but I get what you're going at. With the level of uncertainty here, that's not the worst idea I've heard you propose, Paul.
Thank you.
Okay. Cool. All right, so I've got some action items of connecting with some people, and I think this non-permanent API group idea we can run with, and also I think it will overlap when I submit for API group, or sorry, API review.
Sure, we can talk about it more. You can steer the API review at me, and you know, maybe the stuff that Nikita's cooking up is actually well formed enough that we're all just cool to jump on, and maybe it's not.
Cool. Okay, I'm gonna move on for now on this one just so I can give the rest of the update, but I will circle back on all of that next time. Okay, so back to, this is a MCS API alpha to beta point here about API group, since we were just talking about API group, confusing. But one of the items in alpha to beta for MCS API is that the API group for the MCS API is chosen and approved. So all the examples in the KEP and the SIGs repo itself are multicluster.k8s.io. So I think this is okay. This kind of predates me, but unless there's any drama about this one, I'm going to consider this one possibly okay. And then the other point.
Sorry, just to be clear,
yep.
multicluster.k8s.io will encompass service export and service import,
export,
right?
Service import, exactly. Yeah, that's what this is directly referring to for the MCS API.
Okay.
Okay. So noodle on that for a second if necessary, and I'll just also mention the other one that I think is maybe okay, but I want to kind of open the floor for is, are there other beta to GA graduation criteria for the MCS API KEP? So we were just talking about whether it should be tied to a specific cluster property status and or API maturity stage. So I think that's potentially one. And then I also pulled out, I noticed in the constraints section for the KEP that there's some sort of vague terminology about like, we should integrate with dual stack when it's figured out, and we should integrate with service topology API when it's figured out. And I don't know if we want to make that something explicit about a beta to GA graduation point, and also how we should proceed next steps for those.
That is a great point. So dual stack is beta in mainline. So we really should think about what we want to do with dual stack. And if we do nothing, we can at least make that an explicit choice, but that seems unlikely to me. Service topology is alpha. The revamped service topology is alpha in upstream, or in KK. We probably owe it to think about how that would apply here. That seems like the easier of the two problems to me.
Okay, so I'm hearing there's yes, we need to have a discussion on these two. And do we think that's a beta to GA problem?
I would definitely not go GA until we've thought about those things.
Yeah,
if you're,
it's at least
a
beta to GA problem.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the real question is it an alpha to beta problem?
Yeah.
I don't think we need to deal with that for alpha to beta. I think we should. All right, here. I think we should look at it and make a decision about whether it's alpha beta problem. I think it won't be. I think it will be purely additive, in the same way that it was for service. But we should confirm that. And if we can convince ourselves that it is in fact additive, then we can go beta and add it after that. And if it's not additive, if it's disruptive, then it would be good to pause before we go beta.
Okay, cool. Then I will take also as an action item to bring a discussion about those in more depth to decide if it's an alpha to beta problem.
Sure. And I'm happy to give you the update, offline,
cool.
At your convenience about what the decisions were in SIG Network. I have
awesome.
all the context.
Awesome, great. Besides those two, is there anything on top of mind that we should be thinking about to include in our beta to GA graduation for MCS API specifically? As a reminder, the current ones are scalability / performance testing, understanding impact on cluster local service scalability, and cluster ID defined with at least one other multi-cluster use case.
I'm just trying to think about what other changes were happening in SIG Network. There are some changes around terminating endpoints that we should at least look at.
Okay.
I'm not sure that those will affect us, but we should look at it. I think the rest are all very service specific, so they won't affect this, like load balancers and stuff.
Gotcha. Okay. If anybody else has something between, outside of this meeting, feel free to ping me on Slack or anything too, or comment somewhere, and I will route it to everybody else. Okay, so I know we have a hard stop shortly, so I will just really briefly show the rest of the update. Two items that I think are basically ready to work on either soon or now. There's one about E2E tests exist for MCS services. There's a sort of disjoint between what is referred to in the KEP as things that we should cover and what is actually covered right now. So there's some more work that could go on there. And then I don't think it's connected. I don't even know the process by which to connect it to running on CI. So maybe we need to do that step at some point too. And then there's also a point that there's at least one MCS DNS implementation. So the DNS multi-cluster DNS proposal, as mentioned on the first complete on track items, is almost done and will be updated in the MCS API README itself. I think the plan is to implement it in core DNS. And if people have interest in working on that at some point, that will be ready to work on soon. So put it on your radar. And then this was something that Jeremy brought up, and he didn't want to miss it if we had a long discussion about it. So I'm just going to open the point and then we can talk about it more next time too. But there are two items in the beta blockers that say kubeproxy can consume service import and endpoint slice, and implementation strategy defined and approved. And for kubeproxy can consume service import and endpoint slice, there's a thinking emoji question here about whether we agree that whether this should still be included, or is this an implementation detail and not something that we actually require as a specification of this is what makes the MCS API done. For example, right now we have implementations that use dummy services to get kubeproxy to interact with things. And one pro is that if we don't make this an explicit point of the specification, then there's no restriction on cluster version for that being compliant with the fully specified MCS API. So I understand this point implementation strategy to be directly related to figuring out how to interface with kubeproxy. So there's basically an open point here of should we remove these. So I am interested in taking a temperature, but if we have a long-standing discussion, then I want to make sure Jeremy can be included too.
Yeah, I'd prefer to probably defer that until he's here.
Okay, cool. I saw some nodding, so that seems positive, but maybe it was just understanding nodding. So we can table this one for now, but think about this between now and next time, and then we'll get Jeremy in here too, so we can all discuss. But this is the, kind of proposal here about these two items. And yeah, there's a random smaller thing that I read that we could change some pros, but other than that, I think we're clean. Cool. So that is the update. I will cede the floor unless there are any other questions. I have plenty of action items to take, and then I will come back with another update to the update next week.
Okay, I think that's what's on the agenda for now.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Thanks for the update, Laura. Great job.
Awesome.
All right. See ya. Have a great day, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.